Hey guys, what is up? We are back. I'm sorry for taking a week off. I've just been having a very painful semester, but we are going to be talking about Brumation. It is the season for Tegus to be going down. Some Tegus have actually already gone down. This time last year, Frapp was asleep, and he went the full 7 months. That's pretty much at most what you can expect for a Tegu to Brumate is 7 months. He went to bed very early and then woke up very late. But usually you won't go the full 7 months. Typically, I would probably say I've seen 3 to 4 months being the average, but you can expect at most, and I would plan for 7 months. So let's get into it. We'll talk about questions and sort of everything about Brumation. So if you're a first-time Tegu owner or just are unsure about the signs and everything, we'll talk about it in this video. So let's get going. Make sure before we continue to check that lower right-hand corner and hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit that bell so you are notified with more updates. All right, guys, let's go. The first topic we're going to cover, and this is sort of a big one because there's a lot of debated theories for this topic, is does your Tegu even need to brumate at all? A lot of Tegus don't brumate, and there's no way to really tell if your Tegu is going to brumate or not before seeing some sort of signs or anything. It's really just up to their eternal clock, lighting, and your particular Tegu. Even year to year, a Tegu may or may not brumate. So, it is very questionable if your Tegu is going to brumate or not. There's really no science behind it right now, if at all. I'm not sure what the future holds. But in regards to the potential issues that you might have if your Tegu doesn't brumate, and again, this is a lot of theory. There's no really scientific publications on this stuff, but there are some reproductive concerns. Number one is, especially for a younger Tegu that is growing, they might have stretched out organs from not brumating, thus not being able to reproduce, being infertile, and that's a concern in both males and females in different capacities. For females, it's a concern that if they don't brumate, they might become egg-bound, but these are all theories, guys. It could potentially be an issue. It might be something you want to take into account when you're, going into this brumation season. There's really no absolute science behind it that make it a very solid theory. This is more from people experiencing things and sort of seeing how things go. So, and there are accounts of, Tegus that didn't brumate that weren't egg-bound and stuff like that. So even if it was a possibility that was higher, because of them not brumating, it's not an absolute fact that they will definitely become egg-bound or something like that. And again, these are for pretty much early, young Tegus that are sort of growing and maturing faster. I don't think this would be as big of a concern in a Tegu that's like 3-4 plus years old. But yeah, so another thing you might want to take into account too, or just to expect, it's not really a concern, is that Tegus that don't brumate their first year will be a lot bigger than Tegus that do. Frappuccino here, he went down for a long time, like I said, his first year, he came out pretty small when he woke up after 7 months. For a Tegu that doesn't brumate its first year, it's going to be growing, it's still going to be eating, so it's going to be growing a lot faster, and you can expect a Tegu about 3 times the size of a Tegu that brumated its first year for one that didn't. You just might want to expect them to grow a lot faster if they don't brumate their first year. But that's really not a health concern. That's just sort of what to expect. But that's really the questions you should sort of think about, or the potential problems you should sort of think about if you're discussing, or thinking about, does your Tegu need to brumate? Is that something that's healthier? It does seem like there's a lot less problems or potential problems if they do brumate, but then again, it's not really, you can't really make them brumate. There is some stuff that you could do to encourage them, but to make them brumate, it's just not something that really can occur. It's really up to the particular Tegu. The only thing you can expect, really, if your Tegu doesn't brumate, is that they're still going to slow down a little bit and probably not eat as much. And you probably see this in a lot of other reptiles if you have them, like bearded dragons. They'll slow down a lot, but they won't exactly go into any hibernation or brumation. That's something you can expect, is if they don't brumate, they're probably going to slow down somewhat. But that's really the answers I have right now to the question of, does your Tegu need to brumate? And just some things you should think about. Again, none of this is very scientific fact. It's sort of theory at this point, so I don't want to scare anyone. Now, to follow up, and I pretty much already answered this question, is can you force them into brumation? There are some breeders, there are some owners who are good at encouraging brumation, but there really is, to my knowledge, no way to absolutely force them to brumate. Like I said, it's really up to the internal clock of your Tegu. It's not based on weather or anything like that. If anything, it could be based on lighting. But again, a lot about Tegu and brumation, and this is why it's really hard to find a lot of solid information on the internet about brumation, is it's a lot of theory. There's really no core knowledge or studies at this point. Bert Langerwerf did a lot of stuff, just studying them when he owned them. But again, he didn't really do any scientific studies that really analyze this stuff with data. So, there is some experience with really reputable people, but a lot of this is really, theory. So, like I said, right now there really is no way to really force them. Plus, we also don't know the repercussions of forcing a Tegu into brumation if you could. There are ways to encourage them. I would take a look at Rose City Reptiles on YouTube. He has a nice little thing where once he notices they start slowing down, he does certain things to encourage them into brumation and stuff, which, could be helpful to get them into brumation if you're concerned about the potential health issues. But as far as I know, there's no way to really force them into brumation. The next question we're going to cover is, how do you know your Tegu is about to brumate? And this is very important, especially feeding-wise. You do not want them going down on a full tummy. That could lead to some potential health issues with that food sort of just sitting in their tummy and not being, released, to put it nicely. But really, the two signs you want to look out for is them coming out less and less frequent from their hide. They'll be a lot more sleepy. Oh, nice little Tegu going there. Too bad he turned his back to us. He just woke up, so he's not very enthusiastic about being on camera right now. But anyway, back to the question. You'll notice them coming out a lot less frequent. That's one of the big signs, and you'll notice them feeding a lot less, not eating as much when you offer it to them. And those are two important signs you got to monitor, because when you start to notice them, you start to see them, you could probably expect him or her, your Tegu, to go down within the next few weeks. And that's probably a good sign to stop offering food at some point. When you really know they're not coming out and they're really not eating too much, you should probably just stop feeding them altogether. See if they go down eventually. If they don't go down within the next week or so, maybe offer a little food, but you really want to monitor it. You really do not want them going down with a full tummy. I can't really stress that enough. There is ways, and I'll talk about that briefly. If they do go down on a full tummy, you can wake them up. You can sort of give them a little bit of a bath, warm bath, to make them go to the bathroom, and then you could put them back in, and then they'll go right back to sleep. Usually, if a Tegu wakes up during brumation, they'll just go right back to sleep within the next couple hours or so, and that'll be sort of a future topic we'll talk about in this video about what to do when they wake up during brumation, because they will sometimes. So, but if they do go down on a full tummy, then you could probably just wake them up, give them a warm bath, let them go to the bathroom, and then let them go back to brumate. But those are really two big signs, like I said. It's sometimes a little ambiguous, especially if you don't, have too much experience with a Tegu to really notice this stuff. It's a little overwhelming. I was a little overwhelmed my first year doing this with him, but now I kind of understand what to look for. But definitely just keep an eye on that. Trust me, you'll notice it if you really spend time with your Tegu at least every day or a couple other days or whatever. I would stop offering food sooner than later. It just would be safer. And remember, another yawn. There we go. We got it on camera. Just remember, there's a lot more potential issues if they go down on a tummy, and you probably don't want to worry about them going down on it. So, yeah. Now, like I said, we'll talk about what should you do if your Tegu wakes up during brumation. You really shouldn't do much. The one important thing that you should always have when they're brumating is some water. And a lot of people say they don't really see them come out and drink some water when they do wake up periodically throughout brumation, because a lot will. My guy didn't wake up at all really during brumation. Actually, I think he did a couple times very briefly, but nothing, not longer than probably 15 to 30 minutes. But there are times where they'll wake up during brumation. They'll come out, they'll bask a little bit, they'll just kind of be out there for a couple hours and then go right back and not come out for a while. Have water out in case they want it. That's really important. Some nice clean water. A lot of people, and this will go into our next topic, turn off lights during their brumation period. We'll talk about what I do in a couple minutes or a couple seconds. But you want to make sure when they come out, they do have the ability to bask a little bit and there is some lights on. So make sure to do that if they come out during brumation. Really don't have to do much. Like I said, just make sure that they have some water. Like I said, we'll talk about lighting real quick. A lot of people will start to dim their lighting or lessen the amount of time their lighting is on when they go into brumation. Sort of every week or so, they'll knock off a couple hours of lighting until they shut it off completely. I keep mine on, and I plan to keep mine on again this year, especially when I have an enclosure like this, and he can go in a hide that's dark and whatever. I don't mind keeping the lights on. It really doesn't hurt my electricity bill, number one. And I just want to keep them on in case I'm away or whatever, I'm not home, I'm not paying attention, and he wants to come out and bask a little during brumation. So, you know, I recommend keeping them on if you really don't mind. I don't see any harm in doing that, especially when they have a dedicated hide to get away and, you know, sort of burrow if they have places to go for that. I recommend keeping them on. I don't see any problems if you turn it off. You know, whatever lighting that may be, but you really want to make sure if they do come out for a couple hours during brumation, they have their lights on, they have their heat on. So I think it's just better to play it safe and keep it on all the time. I probably will lessen the amount of time that it is on during the day when, you know, that brumation cycle starts happening. Right now I have it on, I think, for 12 hours a day. Probably lessen it to like 8 or 10 or something like that. But I keep it on. I think it's better. But I also don't think it's a problem if you turn them off and then just keep an eye on them. But that's my recommendation for, you know, lighting during brumation period, but it's ultimately up to you. Now, for the final topic and question we'll cover is how do I know when my Tegu is done brumating? I did a small video at the end of the last brumation cycle of what to do when they come out. This might touch on that a little bit, but it's not really talking about what to do when they come out of brumation. But ultimately, what you want to look for them to come out of brumation to know when they're done is, first of all, you want to see them start coming out more and more. Once you notice for a week or two that they're out a lot and they're basking a lot, they're probably done. Sometimes they will kind of trick you and even be sort of active for a week and then go back to sleep for a few more weeks. So you do want to hold the food, and that's very important when they wake up during the brumation period or when you suspect they're waking up to come out of brumation. Hold off on the food. First of all, remember these guys, they don't really need to eat super often to survive. Not saying you should ever, you know, give them a long period where you don't feed them normally, but they're not going to suffer if you don't feed them for a few weeks, especially if it's around that brumation time. So don't offer food immediately. That's a big one, because then you're going to have that problem, like I said, of the food sitting in the tummy. You're going to have to make sure they excrete it and stuff like that. So, you know, hold off on the food. That's really important. Give them a week or two of being very active, coming out and basking a lot. You'll really notice when they start to get active again. So that's sort of the main sign, is when you start seeing them being active for a couple weeks, not just like 1 week or so. Like I said, hold off on the food. Make sure they have clean water. Like I said, when they're brumating all the time, just keep clean water out for them to drink. But you'll sort of notice when they're out and active again, and that's how you really know they're coming out. Make sure you have the lights on again during that period, but hold off on the food for a couple weeks. That's the main concern. Alright guys, so we're going to wrap the video up now. That's really all the topics I wanted to cover, and I think that's all the topics you really need to know about. Frappuccino wants to have sort of a morning where he doesn't have a camera in his face either. And he is supposed to get fed soon, so he's probably curious where his food's at. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this covered a lot of topics and questions that you had about brumation. If you have a Tegu, this could sort of somewhat be applied to other reptiles as well, but not the specifics. But like I said, have any more questions, let me know in the comments. Make sure to check that lower right-hand corner, subscribe, hit that bell so you know when I post more updates. I hope this helped you guys. I'll see you on Saturday.